Hey there, Flesh and Blood folks, and welcome to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast. Now, many in the Fab community are aware that the Battle Hardened Los Angeles is happening here in just a few weeks over the July 16th to 17th weekend. But what many might not know is that this particular Battle Hardened event has been organized and is being run by a player group. This makes it one of the first large-scale Flesh and Blood events being run by an independent organizer and effectively a group of local TOs. So today I'm joined by Justin, who's going to talk us not only about the event, but also his team's motivation behind it, why they are doing what they're doing, and their goal in running events with a player-first focus. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Flesh and Blood folks, and welcome back to Dice Commando. We have a very exciting chat on the docket today. I'm Andrew with you here, as always, along with fan favorite Joshua the intern, and today's special guest, Justin. So, Justin, thanks so much for joining us today. How is it going, my man?
It's going good. It's a little scorching out here in LA right now, but I'm surviving. I have the air conditioner blasting in the background, but it's good. How about you guys?
Yeah, doing pretty well. How are you doing, Josh?
I have AC and two different fans pointed at me, so I can commiserate with the heat for sure.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, well, before we get into today's discussion, I do want to remind everybody out there that we are sponsored here by our good friends over at FabDB. You guys know them, you guys love them, the best source on the interwebs for everything Fab related. They already have all the Uprising stuff up. You can go over there, deck craft. I've got like 3 or 4 new decks that I made just today. Really great resource for everyone. When you're over there, consider upgrading your account to unlock a whole bunch of additional features. Thanks to our friends over at FabDB. So what I'm going to do at this point is basically turn it over to you, Joshua, because you had the idea for this cast. So kind of, bring us up to speed on, what the idea was, why you wanted to talk to Justin, and let's go from there.
Sure. So a couple of the locals get back from Las Vegas, talk about all the amazing things that happened there with the pre-release. And one of the conversations that popped up was that one of the judges here and one of the active members in the community, and actually a previous Dice Commando visitor, Matt, mentioned that he had heard from a guy who had heard from a guy about the concept of this Battle Hardened that was going to be running in Los Angeles that was community driven instead of being like an official event. And it kind of got us all talking about our interest in doing something similar, and then come to find out that not only was Justin available to and willing to come talk to us about what they've done and the steps that they made, he spent a few hours with us on a call, and I was very impressed. And I thought this is something that needs to get out to the community because I think it's amazing. And I'm sure once you guys hear Justin talk about what they have done and what their goals are and what they're trying to accomplish, that you guys will agree that this is the beginning of something awesome.
Yeah. And just to be clear, it is an official event. It is a sanctioned event. It's just not being run by someone like a Channel Fireball or something like that, right? That's the distinction there. So,
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, talk to us, Justin. What's the backstory? What's going on? What are you guys doing over there? And yeah, bring us up to speed.
I guess the easiest place to start is just how I got into Flesh and Blood. And I came from an MTG background where I did the Grand Prix grind, flew around, traveled with friends, and after falling off from that and then COVID hit, I just wanted to see a new game after things started kind of lifting a little bit. And so I just heard about Flesh and Blood just randomly through some of the channels that I was following. And Vegas was the first event that got me in, the one where Tyler Horspool won with Prism. And after that, I kind of got that itch to play the game. And so I looked for some local stores in LA and found one near me that was Odyssey Games. And we found that there was a small community there, but there was nothing really that was taking off. There's just 1 or 2 people playing, every couple days, setting it up. And I thought, this store's close to me. I want to build up this community. So it was a little bit selfish, so I don't have to drive as far. But we started running events there, getting armories, running events, getting some of the promos, and then people started showing up. And we took that as a good sign of just, hey, let's just keep going with this and build up these new players and kind of push this game along just to see how far we can go with it, because we really all enjoyed it. And as soon as we started doing that, we saw that people really loved the game. And we started doing newbie nights, building decks for people on the weekends, running them through, showing them things. We would have draft nights and people would know how to draft. So I would sit out and my friends would sit out and we would all draft with them and show them how to play and go from there. But this all culminated into us wanting to do our own independent circuit. And that's kind of where this whole Battle Hardened story kicks off, where we wanted to do something that was community driven. It was like a celebration of the community in LA, and we called it the So Calling. And we did our first one. It was pretty good. It was the same weekend as Nationals, and we caught a lot of people who couldn't make it there. But the second one, we really went all out for it. We had commentators, we had a stream, and we had a huge prize pool that we all put up ourselves and from people in the community. And then after that, LSS reached out to us and said, hey, do you want to run a Battle Heart? And we saw you guys doing this and taking initiative, and that's kind of where everything got started.
So they reached out to you. Very interesting. Okay.
Yeah, we keep pestering about them giving us extra prizes, and eventually they're like, hey, we want to talk to you about something else. And we're like, okay, fine. They want us to stop emailing them 100 times about prizes, but they eventually reached out to us and said, hey, do you want to do a Battle Hardened? And we were like, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So that the issue being that, so I guess how is your organization? Is it like a nonprofit setup? Like how, where did that start? Is it just like one guy footing the bill? I mean, how, what's the basic, because other people are going to be looking to this to emulate it for certain. Yeah. So, what's the structure? How's the organization work?
Yeah, we fly under the banner of Odyssey Games, which is a store that we kind of call our home. And for Battle Hardened, I ended up making a separate LLC to kind of run everything through and be like the events company for it. And, for us, it just made sense to do it that way because I was the one who was going to put up a lot of the upfront funding for it, for getting the convention center, the deposits, getting all these things set up. So it just kind of made sense to do it that way. Mm-hmm. And Odyssey was kind of their first point of contact into us. They saw our armories and our attendance and all the events we're running. So that's kind of how we got started in our relationship with LSS.
I see. Yeah, I mean, that does not surprise me that you have some sort of, organization you set up for this, just because it seems to be the safe way to do it. So,
yeah.
Okay, so Joshua, when you had reached out to these guys, you said there was a multiple-hour phone call talking about what they'd learned and all this. What was the exciting part of this, or what questions did you have? I'm just curious about the whole thing.
Yeah, we actually had a list of questions that we had all kind of pulled together about things we wanted to know. And one of the things that we were very cognizant of is that there's a logistics to this that I don't think people would appreciate if they've never done something like this. And we've had some people in our community who have done events for other card games. And so we knew some of the questions we need to ask, kind of like, okay, did you set up an LLC? What was the process for, kind of insurance did you need on top of it's not just the cost for booking the venue. You need to have insurance. You need to have ways to compensate staff. And a lot of it was just going through a lot of the kind of nitty gritty. It wasn't just the excitement for the event itself, which obviously we were very excited to hear about it, which is why we wanted to emulate it. But I think we were very cognizant of the fact that you have to put the work in to make it work. So one thing Justin spent a lot of time with was kind of working through the path that they took to make this something that could actually be a reality.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of, like you said, hidden things that go with running events where, we haven't really run something to this scale, but we quickly learned about a lot of different things of the insurance policy, like you said, of you have to have that. When you get any event of any number of people, you have to get insurance for it. And just going through that process of working with the convention center and working with insurance companies and doing all these different things it's not difficult, but it takes time and you need to know how to do it. and that it's required in the first place. It's
Yeah,
really
and that's
bad
the
if you
thing
find out. Yeah.
that's kind of impressive. Is it's not just that you guys wanted to do it; it's that you guys didn't get discouraged once you found out all these new things that you had to do. Like, oh, now we have to do this, and now we have to do that. So that was one thing that impressed me quite a bit about learning about your guys' journey getting to this point was that you guys stuck with it and are making it work, and I'm excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah, I'd like to think I hide the stress well.
That's probably
As soon
fair.
as we hung up from that call where they said, "Do you want to do a battle harden?" We're like, "Absolutely." And then we hung up. We looked at each other. We're like, I don't know anymore. But we just like collected ourselves and said, like, "All right, this is our thing now, and let's get rolling."
Mm-hmm.
Were
Yeah.
you guys given a time frame from LSS about when they wanted this to happen, or was there a goalpost about okay,
Good question.
you guys
Yeah.
need to do it by this date, so that's the goalpost, or like how did you
Yeah.
set the guideline for yourself?
Yeah, so they gave us a window of kind of here's our road to national season, and we want to do a battle harden there. And one of the things that was challenging was it was a very close window. Like we really only found out about 1 to 2 months before, everyone else heard about it, which is not a lot of time to set something up, get staff together, kind of, get all your ducks in a row and go for it. Which I know is something that they've said they're working on. Like they want to have a slate at the beginning of the year, which means all the events are being worked on, way before you ever hear about them. But the challenges with COVID and events and, really kind of opening up everything kind of not haphazardly, but just like, okay, we can run it now, let's go and run it. Kind of mentality of just like, we're taking our opportunities where we can, which leads to a lot of, close windows and sometimes unhappy players, but it's better than no event, I think.
Yeah, interesting. So there's likely a lot of people watching right now who would love to run their own event, right? And I think Joshua hit on it pretty well. That I think a lot of people when they start running up into a lot of those walls, like, oh well, I didn't realize I need to have insurance. How do I do that? They just say, okay, it's just too, the activation energy is too high. So how did you guys? I mean, have you just been plowing through and doing all this? I mean, I'm sure you have a team.
Yeah.
And again, don't be afraid to toot your own horn. I know you're going to give credit to people, right? And I know you're not taking it away from them, but don't be afraid to toot your own horn here, right? If you're doing 80% of the work and you're just farming out other stuff, or if you've got the insurance guy and you've got the logistics guy and the food guy, whatever it may be, right? So how's really this whole thing working out?
Yeah. We have a great team of people helping out and like also volunteering to help out and spending their time with us. And there's behind Battleharden, there's 3 of us. And the first one is Evan Bridges, who is a great judge within the community, and he's been helping me run events, and he works at Odyssey Games. And we've kind of been there from the beginning, where we've been, the armories were 4 people, and it was just me and Evan and 2 other people. And we kind of just became friends and really grew the community together. And he's taken a lot of the initiative to be the judge, to be the person who runs the organized play part, where I put together everything else that goes outside of it, like the marketing and the stream and all those things. And then the new person who kind of came on was my friend Brian Del Torre, who is, funny enough, not a Flesh and Blood player up until very recently. And he had a ton of experience running MTG tournaments at a store level and going to Grand Prix and experiencing that and kind of bringing that logistics side to it, where it's, things that he was frustrated with and things that he saw were done and, here's the standard of how events are run at these kind of scales. Because Magic, at its smallest scale, was still larger than a lot of Flesh and Blood events. And so we had that experience going in of, me and Evan being a little naive towards the bigger event side. But he brings that experience and now is a recent convert to Flesh and Blood. He went with us to Vegas and kind of, you hook him, as you get to those big events. But, we have a lot of great people just offering their time. Like one of the people that I mentioned earlier was Josh from San Diego, who put me in contact with the guys from Houston. And he does AV work, and he's going to come up and help us with the setup and projectors and speakers and, just working on that with us. And other people are just donating their time to run side events and do prize walls because, they feel like this game is a community and they want to give back to it. A lot of people took their level 1 judge test to try and become judges for the event, and they want to learn how to become judges. And so the LA community is kind of really stepping up, and even at a store level, a lot of stores have been really great partners with us of, hey, when it comes out, we'll advertise it to our players and we'll send people, we'll be vendors. So I think an event like this is easy to run when you have, a lot of people like a corporation, you've done this before, or a huge community behind you kind of really wanting to push it forward. Not that you can't do it with a small team, but it makes it so much easier. And so I feel lucky to have, LA and all those people around me helping us out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
One question I have is I didn't know all of the backstory, so it's cool to know that you guys had kind of built up from armories, building the armories. You've done bigger events, and that caught the attention of LSS, which credit to them for always seeming to find people in the community who are doing good things and reaching out to them. That's how Andrew got involved, I believe, in the beginning. They recognized his awesomeness, and we've been having quite a few chats since then. So you go from small armories, a small community, slowly building it up, and now you have 2 kind of preceding events that gave you a little bit of, kind of backstory or experience with building this. So looking towards the Battle Hardened, what is your success criteria? Like, what would make this a successful event for you, where you feel like you've done what you've wanted to do for the community?
Yeah, I think the main metric, or even not main metric, just the goal of Battle Hardened for me is, as soon as someone leaves and drives home, they're like, I want them to do that again. I want that event to be run by people like that again. Like, it was smooth, I had a lot of fun, and the worst thing you can complain about is bad draws. Like, that's what I'm hoping for at an event like this. Because we've all been to different events that just kind of left us feeling like it was great in spite of the event. Like, the game was fun, I had a lot of experience with cool people, I met everyone, we went to dinners, but it's like, I wish it was just easier to do that. And I think that frustration of, we could do this better. We want to do better, and we want to push this forward and make it so that these events are celebrations of the community rather than events that just have us play flesh and blood together. And being able to facilitate that of just, community and working on, capturing that in a weekend is something that I think would be a great success for it. Not for just this event, but any event going forward, whether it's something that we run or anyone else. Because I think that's how you grow a game in a community.
Mm-hmm. Well, kind of in line of the success question, I was curious as well. For something like this, I mean, you're obviously having to look at the financial side of it, right? So what's your, I mean, you don't have to say numbers, right? But like, what's your break point in terms of, kind of like critical mass of people, right? Like, do you have to have 250 people to be successful, but then when you get over that, you have like another 550 based on size and rents and stuff like that? How does that all work?
Yeah. So from the event perspective, we're trying to hit maybe around 300 to 400 tickets over both days, because we're running a Road to Nationals and a Battle Hardened. Mm-hmm. And so kind of getting in that ballpark would be a good success for us, as long as we're also running side events, which we can talk about later. If we're trying to be a little bit more progressive with side events and the way ticketing system works, and being a little bit more transparent towards players. But that's kind of where we're operating. And then we're taking a little bit of a loss in purchasing a lot of different things that kind of go with running events. So like the little small stuff that, like banners and standees and printing out different things and bringing all these different pieces of equipment to it are just costs that add up. But, I figured that's the entry cost for wanting to do stuff like this more. And I'm hoping to do not just Battle Hardens, but more events here on the West Coast, and even our independent tournament circuit as well, like pushing that and bringing that to a more prominent scene as well, because LSS has talked to us about it and they want to work with us to push that as well. Mm-hmm. They're really invested in working on these independent circuits too. So that's kind of what our ballpark finances look like right now.
Yeah. I so many questions, but the the LSS part of it, like, that was another thing I was basically going to go. Oh, I mean, let's just go down the road, right? I mean, what's the advantage to LSS to work with a bunch of independent contributors, quote unquote, versus work with someone like a CFB or something like that, right? Is there advantage to them, or is it just total volume? What are your thoughts on that?
I think from, I guess, my perspective, the advantage of running with local organizers is that you have people who actually are living within the community. So one of the things that we made a huge point of emphasis on was streaming, and streaming our tournaments and like building that up. And then within those streams, not really focusing completely on the gameplay, but the players who are playing. Because LA has a lot of great players, but you only ever hear about the people who win, you know, callings and pro tours. But there's a lot of people who are right on that cusp. So we made a huge focus to focus on the personalities. Who's this person? They won literally all of the pro quests here. And then they're trying to grind into the pro tour, and they're like one of the best players in the area. And focusing on those kind of interactions and stories pushes that forward, you know, the community forward. Like one of the biggest wins we had from the last independent tournament we did was the winner. We streamed, we talked to him, we interviewed him, and he went to New Jersey, and then people recognized him there. They're like, oh, you won the So Calling. And he was confused because he was like, where are these people coming from? Like, this was just a small stream in LA. And people were coming up to him like, oh, you're the Craig Pollock, who the guy who won the So Calling the week before the Pro Tour. And like, to him, that was crazy for him to kind of experience. But for us, that was a huge win. Because it means that people know who these, you know, grinders are and these players who are fantastic at the game, but may not have just gotten to that level yet. Or maybe that, you know, that placing. So I think that's the huge advantage of running with locals, is that our commentators knew who all the players were. The people running the events kind of know all the different connections in the area. Like, oh, like, you know, I know this person who can get you this thing. Or I know this person who has this venue. The person who is running our tournament, his mom worked for the insurance company that we went with. And so all these little pieces started to come together that made it 10 times easier. And I think that's the intangibles of running with a community, that not only do you have people who know and live in it, they can recommend and provide guidance to different things that you may not know about.
One other question. You mentioned the stream, and one thing I was kind of curious about, and you may have brought this up in the call previously, but I wasn't there for that part of it, so it might be good for other people too, is you did mention the emphasis you guys did on the commentating team and bringing them in. So what was that process like? Who did you look for? Who are your commentators?
Originally, it came out of just, we want someone behind a mic. And in just kind of knowing people around the community, there's people who stepped out of like, oh, I'd be interested in this. And the first two commentators that we had were Colin Hodgman, who is from the Attack Action podcast, and then Blake Meyer, who works in reality TV casting. And so I think, again, I felt like I got super lucky in that the people who wanted to do it were people who were, you know, mic ready and ready to go and wanted to offer their support to it. And they turned out to be great, where we just put them behind the mic, and then for 8 hours they just commentated, and it was kind of like a match made in heaven of, you know, you have the color commentator and the play-by-play, and they bounced off each other really well. And I can't comment to having a master plan of working that together. It just happened to work out that way. But I think when you're ingrained in a community and with a group of players, it just kind of, stuff like that just happens. Where it just, oh, I know this person who wants to commentate and maybe interested in it, and it just kind of follows through, and, you know, one domino hits another, and then all of a sudden you're here at a stream with great commentators. So I can't really
I was curious because I feel like, especially if you're going to emphasize streaming, which I think is important, because I think a lot of people watch the streams either live or after the fact to watch the gameplay and see what good players are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And having a really good commentating team goes a long way, I think, towards the production level, the perceived, you know, level of product that, you know, you're streaming out there. So
yeah, and Blake Meyer, one of the commentators, was really emphasizing on that, of just player stories. You know, him working in Hollywood, he's like, I see this all the time. Like, I want to push these stories because that's what's the most interesting thing about any game, any TV show, anything you watch, is who are the people playing. And it's really easy to not focus on that. It's easy to just say, he's hitting for 4, he's blocking for 3. But knowing who that person is and I talked to Craig and he's like this, and he loves to build his decks in a certain way and kind of be off the beaten path. It's like that's the stuff that people care about and really are interested in, because it's something you just don't hear very often, because you really realistically can't at a huge level, because there's so many players. So I think
that's an excellent point about being community driven is exactly that. Because I mean, yes, we know Dylan Mack plays Prism, and so plays this guy, and he so has won this with Oldhim twice. He's really good at that. But other than those people who have won prestigious events with particular decks, there's not a whole lot of identity, and I think that'll grow as more events happen. But I think it's even better for it to happen locally, because we have inside stories. We know who these people are. We have a funny anecdote. We can talk about things that, even great commentators who aren't from the community, they don't have that resource or that they can pull from to create a great narrative for.
Yeah, and it's just a different kind of story you tell at different events. Right, at a pro tour, it's a professional event. You have players who are playing for all the marbles, and you commentate differently because people are there for different things. But at a local event, I feel like pushing that, you have that advantage, so why not take advantage of it?
Yeah, no, that's pretty solid. So, again, we know if people are still watching at this point, they're very interested in probably doing this themselves and they're looking for advice. So where do you recommend getting started? Because I'm guessing it's not emailing LSS, right?
Yeah, I think one of the things that, because we didn't really go into it with this intention of like, oh, we're going to get a battle hardened and, eventually bigger events. It was just, we wanted to run a local event that was independent. And I think having that experience of kind of putting it on from scratch is really valuable, because it's easy to take the prizes from LSS, just run a ProQuest and road to nationals, go through everything like that, kind of go through the motion of running those events. But working through an independent one, you have to focus on things that you wouldn't think about, like marketing. How do you get people to sign up? How do you get people to find out about it? How do you get attendance? And as you start going through all of that, then it becomes more of investment and also experience on the TO side. And so for us, like when we started streaming, I talked to a bunch of other stores who tried it, but they said, oh, it just wasn't for us. We had 1 or 2 viewers, but for us, that wasn't the point. It was to get the reps doing streaming. Because it doesn't matter, like, if you have one or 2 people or 200 people, it's like, can you do it? And can you set that up and make it reliable and have something that's entertaining and building this product up essentially and packaging it up and selling it to an audience? And so being able to do that part is super valuable, because when you run through the usual channels of ProQuest, RTN, skirmishes, you don't get that knowledge, I think. So I think trying those and kind of running your own independent tournaments and organizing that, putting together a prize pool, getting sponsors, advertising in different stores, getting players to come, like that's super valuable. And what helped that honestly a ton for Battle Hardened, because we're doing that at a much larger scale now.
Yeah. No, fair point. All right, so let's go ahead. Excuse me. We'll go ahead and we'll throw an ad up. I'll throw some info up. So walk us through Battle Hardened, what people need to know, what the deets are, and how they can find you.
Yeah, you can sign up at battlehardenedla.com. We have our ticketing site up, and you can purchase the main event tickets and also side event tickets through there. And you can find us also at Odyssey Games CA on Twitter. That's where we'll post updates as we get closer, and then as the event happens, we'll post updates about the events, if we're running late or early or anything like that. So those are the 2 best places. And then you can reach out to me on Discord. I'll give you guys my Discord. Maybe you can put in the information or in the description or anything like that. But I'm always happy to talk to people about events, and I got super lucky to, as I was advertising it, get invited to a bunch of Discords and meet the different communities. And that was honestly really cool. So feel free to contact me there.
Awesome. So we're going to see one of these in Houston. Is that what I'm hearing then, Joshua? Is that what's going on down there?
Yeah, but we learned from his example that I think we're going to start with some smaller events, prove that we can do it, and that the people who are dedicated or say they're dedicated are, and that we can manage it and hopefully slowly build up to some pretty big events. We're thinking to do things because Greater Houston area is quite large. About doing something each month in a different section of Houston to accommodate different parts of the community. And if we can prove it and those events run well, then trying to do one centralized big event where we would try to bring everyone in together to do something a little bit bigger. And if it keeps working and we get better at it and get the experience, maybe we'll get our own Battle Hardened as well.
Yeah. Well, I would love to, I want to give a huge pat on the back to you for making this happen, Justin, and your team, Evan and Ryan, as well as the other people that you shouted out. I think this would be a fantastic thing because a dream of having, let's say, shells of community-run events around the country, around the globe, really speaks towards game sustainability, right? Because if this game's still here in 10 years, maybe it's not growing at the same rate it is, right? But it becomes far more sustainable when the community is the one running the community as opposed to some company somewhere saying, yeah, it's not worth our time anymore or whatever it may be, right? So I want to be very clear. I'm not souring on Flesh and Blood. That's, if anybody took that from that, that's not the point. My point here is just running on a more long-term sustainable model of having the community support the game. It's what I've seen succeed in the past, and it's very, very exciting. So congrats. Thank you for making it happen, and huge pat on the back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So any shout-outs you want to give before we wrap it up?
I think just to the community out in LA, all the stores out here, they really try really hard to just do good by the community, which is really hard to come across a lot of times with different stores and everything. So I think, just the fact that we've been able to put on this event with so much help and support is just honestly a testament to the game and also the community that it fosters. And so I think that's the biggest shout out for me.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, again, thank you for taking your time. It sounds like you've been taking a lot of time for a lot of people, which is really great. So, another pat on the back for that. But I know that a lot of people are going to be watching not only what happens in Los Angeles over your stream and for the gameplay, but also watching how the event folds out for a successful model for this in the future. So, wish you the best of luck. We'll do everything we can up here to help promote it. Man, it's only like 3 weeks away. 3.5 weeks away, whatever it may be.
It's up on you.
Yep. So anyway, thank you very much, Justin, for joining us. Joshua, thank you for making this happen. And you guys got to say it with me. 3, 2, 1, go Commando.
Go Commando.
Go Commando.